Hey Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you, Joe?
I'm all right. I heard you had a conversation with Chad Rubin.
I did, and Chad was very nice. I was actually late to our conversation by a few minutes, and we had a very short amount of time. But there's so much to talk about with Chad because he's very knowledgeable within the Amazon space. He has an e-commerce business within the Amazon space, a pretty large business there. And then he's also the founder of Scubana, which automates inventory ordering for Amazon stores or e-commerce stores, and really automates that entire part of somebody's online business.
Well, I'll tell you what, inventory management is critical when it comes to selling your business. And it's part of that documentation, those four pillars you talk about. Documentation's the fourth and least exciting one, but it does bring the most value. So I'm sure it's a great product and a good conversation.
Yeah, and something that we talked about in that conversation is something you and I have talked about, and I think most entrepreneurs struggle with, but know that they have to do, and that's find the parts of your business that, as Chad said in the interview, find the parts of the business that you suck at or that are kind of a grind, and figure out ways to make that easier. That's one of the things that Scubana does for people. But we were talking about it really in light of how do you grow a business in the right way? How do you, especially an Amazon business, how do you grow that business? And he sees a lot of entrepreneurs. He sees big Amazon stores, sees people doing lots of money. And so I wanted to delve into what are some of the habits that he sees from these higher end sellers. Where are they putting their time? And so that was one of the many, many things we covered in this discussion was take a look at the stuff that you're not good at and figure out how to not do that part yourself. Either get somebody else to do it or find software that does that for you.
And again, he's not just pitching software. He is a high-level, multi-million-dollar Amazon seller with real experience, and he's talking from a point of view of I've been there, I've done that, I do that every day. Do what I do, and yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, he's done extremely well in the private label space, and that was another topic that we discussed. And I think buyers are going to find this part interesting as far as when you're getting into an Amazon store. How much work should you actually expect to be doing after you buy that business? And how much effort should you be putting into product creation, continual product creation? He believes in constantly bringing out new products, and he cites Apple as an example of this, that they didn't rest on the iPhone 1 or the iPhone 2. They're constantly bringing out new products. So the interview is a bit shorter than the other ones that we've done, and so maybe we can have him back later because honestly, he's a wealth of knowledge. And he and I could have talked probably for about an hour and a half easily, but there was just a shorter period of time. So why don't we get to the interview and just kind of hang on because we do jump around quite a bit, but there's really some good nuggets in there. Hey, Chad, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me here. I'm super psyched.
All right. So on our little podcast, we found ourselves in the habit of letting our guests introduce themselves. Find that you guys can describe what you do a little bit better than what we do. So why don't you just introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers, what you do and your background.
Sure. So for those that are listening, my name is Chad Rubin. I started off selling online 2007, 2008. Time frame across many different channels, but I started on Volusion and on Amazon selling home appliance parts and accessories direct to consumer, and evolved that into now solving a problem, scratching my own itch, which was actually creating a software that I needed that I couldn't find in the marketplace to manage and automate my entire business.
Okay, very good. And is that Think Crucial?
No, so the e-commerce business is Think Crucial or Crucial Vacuum. This software business is called Scubana. And it's really built around high-performing merchants.
Awesome. How long has Scubana been around?
We started building about 4.5 years ago. We went live, I think, roughly about 2.5 years ago.
Awesome.
So we're scaling quickly. We're really excited about it. And it certainly, I used to have 30 employees in my e-commerce business, and now I have 2.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, so you said automate your entire business. What do you mean by that? What are you automating?
So like, for example, I'm a very large private label seller or brand, you can say, and we have 950 SKUs. We have 3,000 listings across 20 channels. So trying to forecast, demand plan, mining through that data and figure out how many to buy, when to buy. Scubana will actually algorithmically create you purchase orders awaiting your approval with a nice little bow on top. So essentially it's using technology to automate inefficient human tasks.
Wow.
That's just one idea. That's one example. There's a lot more I can share with you, but I'm not here to sell my software.
Right, right. Well, let's talk a little bit about that inventory management and how it relates to Amazon. You said you have 950 SKUs.
Yep.
Awesome. I had James Thompson on from Prosper Show a while ago, and we had talked a lot about what makes an Amazon business sustainable, right? How do you identify a business that is going to sustain for the long term versus something that's going to get absolutely crushed by competition? And I'll give you an example of a client that we worked with. She wanted to sell her business, and she was selling, without giving too much information about it, she was selling a product that would go into your kitchen. And it was basically a one product line, and she was making a lot of money off of it. She was doing really, really well. But then it didn't take long before all of a sudden she just completely saw that product line disappear because of competition, right? Her revenue just started to tank because of competition. And so it kind of left me wondering about this idea of expanding on product lines. Now, you do private label. How often do you add new products to your product lines? Are you constantly looking and researching for new products?
So I think that's really a big differentiator factor. If you just sit on your laurels and you just hope and pray that your SKUs are going to take you into the next year or the following year after that, I think that's a big mistake. So if you look at like what iPhone does, right? iPhone came out with the first touchscreen phone, and they already knew that Android, HTC, or any of these other brands were going to come and copy then replicate their process. And so they already moved into the iPhone 2, the iPhone 3, the iPhone 4. You get my drift. So I think that you have to constantly do to grab this quote from Wayne Gretzky, you got to go where the puck is going, not where the puck is. I think that's a big piece. The second piece is you have to create products that actually solve problems. So if your customer is, right now there's 100,000 toilet paper holders on Amazon.com. I kid you not, 100,000 toilet paper holders. So how do you differentiate yourself? How do you win in a crowded marketplace? Right? You can't do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So somebody who's looking to buy an Amazon business, and I'm just kind of going through the mindset, right? Somebody who's buying an Amazon business, they're going to look back and they're going to look at the historical financials of a business and say, this Amazon business has done X amount of dollars, has done $1 million in revenue over the past 12 months with these 100 SKUs. How much should somebody buying a business look at that and see value in what they're buying if those SKUs aren't going to be relevant? Or is that the wrong way of thinking about those SKUs?
Well, I mean, you can go, obviously you've done this many times. You can go back 3 years, 2 years, see the trend, what's trending. You can also do a cohort analysis of your revenue on specific SKUs that you have, right? I'm sure you probably do this for clients. You ever do that? You take a SKU that was, let's just say in one group that was launched a year ago and see how that's performing versus a SKU that was performing 2 years ago and see how that's performing over a period of time. But that's what I would do if I was looking to buy an Amazon business. I would look at that. I would look at the market condition. I would look at what they're paying for sponsored ad costs, what the bids are, what the A cost is. I was on the phone with somebody yesterday, and they're paying 90. They have a 90% A cost.
Wow. Well, explain what that is.
The cost of the sale. So essentially, if they're selling something for $1, the cost of that sale is 90 cents. Like they're paying that much in ad spend, and that is not sustainable, right? They are losing money.
Right.
And now you have CPG brands that are coming onto Amazon.com's platform selling the same thing, but they don't care about their ROI on their spend because they're such a big brand that this is to them is a small fraction of their marketing spend that they have allocated to their department.
Wow. Do you see much of a market for taking a product that's doing well on Amazon, maybe in a wholesale condition, and moving over to the private label world?
So you're saying if you're just reselling on Amazon and you're like, okay, I want to dip my toes in the water to build my own product. Is that your question?
Right. I know a lot of people test products on Amazon, right? Or they'll test a market and a certain niche on Amazon and get themselves established there. And then once they start to have some footing on Amazon, they get an idea for a product at that point. And people like me are out there telling Amazon sellers, if you want to have a sustainable business, that probably the one that we look at top of the rung, and maybe you have a different opinion on this, would be the private label brands. How does somebody make that step if they're looking to maybe buy, or more importantly, somebody who's preparing to sell their business and maybe they're just on the wholesale side?
Yeah, so a personal share with you would be when I first started, I was reselling vacuum products, right? I was just a reseller. I was just a middleman. And for me, before D2C, direct consumer disruption was the in thing, I saw the writing on the wall and I was like, wow, like what value am I adding if I'm just a reseller, right? If I'm just playing this game of musical chairs on Amazon, there is no value. So I want to create value. And that was my approach to essentially not having to compete for the buy box, building my own brand, going direct to consumer. And now it's become the in vogue thing to do. So I do think that there is a different competency, if you will, of being a private labeler versus being a reseller. Two very different competencies. And I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think you can learn either one of those, but it does take a different part of your brain and a different type of focus, right? Latching onto a listing, negotiating with a vendor where you're just buying in a buy-sell relationship versus actually building a brand, logo, fulfillment, figuring out trademarking, figuring out what actually will make a listing stick and actually rank is a very, very different skill set.
So how can somebody start to evaluate that if they're looking at a business and looking at expansion? So if I'm looking at a business like yours that sells vacuum accessories and I'm looking to buy it potentially, how do I look at that and start to evaluate that marketplace as to the growth of that? Where would somebody who's kind of new to the Amazon ecosystem start to learn about that?
So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. If you're just looking at me and my secular trend of my business, you would obviously look at the gross margins, the operating profit, see what's happening. If you want to actually understand just the demand, right? One quick way to do it is just go to Amazon.com and use the A9 search and see what people are searching. Then you can use a tool like Merchant Words that'll actually tell you how many searches are happening for those keyword terms. So then you understand the demand.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful. Let's talk a little bit about inventory management, since that's something that you do quite a bit of with Skubana. What are some of the problems that you see rampant among Amazon sellers and somebody who's just using FBA on a fairly small basis right now?
I mean, I think someone that's very small doing FBA, they're selling on one channel, maybe they have 10 SKUs. They wouldn't be an absolute fit for Skubana, even though Skubana has all the profitability numbers for them. Where our sweet spot is when the complexity of the business gets to a much larger scale. We have a lot more SKUs, we sell on a lot more channels, there's a lot more moving pieces, and that's where we come in and solve a problem. So I think one of the biggest things, if we're just talking about sellers in general, one of the big things that sellers do is they don't respect their time and the worth of their time, the value of their time. They trade dollars for time. And once you can figure out and apply a dollar value to your time and free yourself up, emancipate yourself from the shackles of running your business day to day and build a system around that business, I think there's a tremendous amount of value you can unlock and grow your revenue, double it, triple it, 6x it, whatever you need to do.
Just by freeing up your time.
I think, yeah, by freeing up your time, because essentially you have to identify, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to optimize where you're spending your time. So where are you spending your time today? Understanding where you spend that time, analyzing where your employees spend their time, and any low value task should be delegated off your plate. Any task that you suck at should come off your plate. Have a bucket list and have an effort list. Doing these things can really significantly change the direction of your business. Because just because, and I always say this, just because you're running hard doesn't mean you're running in the right direction. Like you can hustle, there's only 24 hours in a day. You can hustle, but like what are you hustling towards?
Right. So what should somebody who's got an Amazon business be hustling at? Obviously, managing the inventory, especially if there's automation software out there, doesn't make sense. Where do you think people should be putting their time?
I certainly don't think that if you have a large business, you should be in the weeds using spreadsheets and pivot tables to figure out how many to buy, when to buy, looking at the velocity here, scraping together all these different reports from Amazon to figure out what's my profitability in Amazon, but still not having any idea of what your profitability is off Amazon or anywhere else. So your time is better spent not doing that. There's other things, like for example, for me, like I am not a guy that likes to do sponsored ads on Amazon, right? My team should not be doing that. Or my time is better spent building a business, working strategically on perhaps finding a new logistics partner. Maybe my time is better spent building up, thinking about what new SKUs we should be buying, right? That are strategic. So freeing up my time of things that are just, I'm not great at, or I shouldn't be doing is very, very important to a seller today.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about growing an Amazon business. Some of the easiest ways that you can see, or some of the biggest mistakes. You see a lot of Amazon businesses. I'm sure you see a lot of businesses where you look at them and say, this guy could probably be doing 4 or 5 times what they're currently doing. What are some of the common things that you see people doing that you think, obviously time, we talked about that, but more practical, like takeaway tips? Like if somebody's got an Amazon store, they're listening to this, maybe they're thinking about selling in a year, 2 years, or never, whatever the case may be, but they want to grow. What are some common areas that you see people missing out on?
So there's a couple, there's a lot actually, but like just to give you a few tips or examples, in my opinion, I think that you can explode your SKU count and you can bundle like items together on Amazon to increase your average order value. Right? That to me is a big one. Now, not just on Amazon. I know we're just speaking specifically on Amazon, but I must point out, Mark, that I do believe there's a ton of volume and market share to be had off Amazon. And you know this better than most, is that if you're building a business off Amazon and you're diversifying, you're going to get a much higher EBITDA multiple for your business.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been preaching this for a while, that we recommend people, but people often see the other channels and Amazon tends to dwarf those other channels. Are you seeing different results?
I would say Amazon is roughly 50% of my revenue. So, that's in line. Like if you look at the numbers, Amazon technically has 50% of e-commerce market share. That's the average. So, I do think there's life off Amazon. I think that Amazon makes it so easy. It's like a gateway drug. Once you get in, you're hooked. You can't get out. Right. It made it so easy that people are like, wait, I'm just doing so well here. Why would I put my time anywhere else without thinking about the big picture? So they're not thinking about off Amazon growth, diversification, because if you're just a one-trick pony and you're just selling on Amazon, well, you're Amazon's customer, right? You don't even have your own customers at that point. You're Amazon's customer and you're an at-risk acquisition target. Two is they're not thinking about amnesty, which is a whole nother problem that's happening now, right? You're going to have a hard time selling your business if you're not actually doing things properly, like filing amnesty. It's a huge liability.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about that quite a bit and talked to James a little bit, talked to Scott Sharp about that. The off-channel stuff, I find interesting that 50% of your revenue is coming from there. Because again, we see people try once in a while and then they give up. I think your observation about it being easy, I'll tell a quick story here. I was at Prosper Show and I was amazed by the number of people coming up to me at Prosper Show that were just pouring in ridiculous amounts of money, at least compared to what we usually see or have traditionally seen in the world of e-commerce. And this one couple came up and they were just very kind of, lazy is a bad word, but it's the only word that I can really think of. They were just kind of lazy about things and said, we're pulling about $1 million per year in revenue. And really, it's just kind of an easy life right now. And so they had no motivation to really continue on. And part of me says, you know what, if that's what you want to do, more power to you. Grab the gold while it's there to grab, but understand that might go away. But if you want to build something sustainable and possibly sell down the road, having that off-channel stuff is something people should be looking at. And I don't want you to have to give away, some of the stuff that you're doing, some of the secrets that you're doing. But if you were to recommend to somebody who's saying, all right, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to go off Amazon. I'm going to open up a couple other channels. What would you recommend people look to open up first?
Yeah, so it depends on your category. There's no broad stroke for everybody. But I would say that my second biggest channel is my own website. So I'm not saying that generates the other 50%. I'm just saying that my second biggest channel is my own website and go from there. Because a lot of people start their search on Amazon, but a lot of people start their search on Google. And now I'm really starting to get into Facebook because I think that that's where a lot of people are spending a lot of time and it's uncaptured. It's an uncaptured audience that you can target. Now, do people on Facebook want to buy vacuum filters? And like if I'm in a meeting and I get out of the meeting and I want to just free my mind, do I want to go on Facebook and see a vacuum filter? No. But if I'm a birthing mother and I want to understand how to create more lactate in my breast milk, I may want to go on Facebook. And if I see an ad for that, I may click it and buy it off Facebook or through Facebook, via Facebook. So I think that it's really important to pick the right social channel and the right channel that works for the market that you're trying to target.
Yeah, and I think I'll echo on that and say a website from a valuation standpoint is by far the most valuable second piece to have, primarily because you own the customers and you can do so much more with that channel. And Facebook advertising, I mean, there's no shortage of courses out there that are going to teach you how to really use Facebook. And frankly, even with vacuums, you can probably make a go of it with Facebook, not in a direct response way, but if you start thinking about your marketing in terms of building awareness first and then building a relationship and then pushing someone to a conversion, Facebook is a fantastic option for that. And again, owning that customer.
Yeah, we don't sell full vacuum cleaners. right? We just sell the replacement accessories, but you can then also use the Facebook audience for remarketing. Like if someone comes to my site and bounces, I can remarket to them through a Facebook pixel. And that's definitely something that we do already today.
Awesome. Well, you know what? I want to end this here because I know you're up against the clock and I am as well. This is a little bit short of an interview, but maybe we can have you back sometime in the future to talk more in depth about this stuff. I appreciate you taking the time today, though.
Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Thanks, Chad. Talk to you later.
Appreciate it.